This is the Art and Business of Writing podcast. Hello, and today I am with Sonja Wise, who is the owner of Sonja Wise Co. Welcome, Sonja.
Hi, thanks, Chris, for having me.
Yeah, great to have you on. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing super. Hey,
Good.
so I want you to expand a little bit about your background. Tell our listeners, more about who you are and what you do.
Okay, well, I'm an artist and a marketer. I basically grew up around art and marketing and did it for the public sector for the majority of my career, and decided about 7 or 8 years ago that my freelance work would make a viable standalone business. And I've been doing it as my own business, providing graphic design for small businesses and several writers, actually. So I work specifically on brand identity and developing an identity so that the small guys can compete with the big boys.
Ooh, I like that. So the small guys can compete with the big boys.
Oh, yeah.
So that's possible?
Oh, yes. It's entirely possible. It is all about perception.
So tell me a little bit about, your design background. Like, how do you get into, your creative space when you're ready to start working on creative?
That's a very good question. I'm going to give you sort of an artist answer.
Yeah.
I hate to be vague like that. I prefer to talk with the customer, my client, and try to get inside their head a little bit by asking them sometimes weird questions. But what vision do they see? What adjectives would they describe for their objective? Whatever I'm designing, whether it's a logo or a business card or a website. And once I kind of get inside their head a little bit, I really need to sit on it for a day or two. I keep notebooks all over the house. I'm a very visual person, so I remember that I wrote this idea in the red notebook in the kitchen. And as long as I keep the red notebook in the kitchen, I'm good to go. So I will do sketches and notes. And then when I'm so inspired, I always keep the deadlines. But when I'm inspired, I sit down and knock it out. And it's a lot of fun. I have a pretty good hit record, usually with my clients. If I don't get it on the first draft, I usually nail it on the second draft. So it's fun. It's a good challenge.
Oh, yeah? I know. I love, the whole challenge of trying to come up with like concepts and ideas. How do you start? Do you concept on paper or do you concept like on screen?
I've done both. And it just sort of depends on the design, to be perfectly honest. Some designs just flow better on the screen. If I know I have to use a certain element, they give me half of a graphic and I have to build off of that. Sometimes on screen is actually a faster flow for me. But usually I like to sketch out. They're really horrible sketches that I don't share with the client, but they get me going.
Right. Yeah. So, in the whole business image concept of your business, I'd like to talk about that a little bit if we can. Like, you do logos, correct?
Yes, I do.
And one of the things for a budding writer who's really wanting to get into the freelance sphere, or even get into developing themselves as a brand as they become an author, is that they're going to need a logo. Yes. What's your process for developing a logo?
I think that a logo needs to reflect either a writer's personality or reflect the image that they want the public to see. So the process is kind of getting to know a little bit about the client and their tastes. I know this sounds really sort of out there, but if I'm designing a logo for you, Chris, and you don't like it, you are not going to push it. You're not going to sell it. You're not going to wear it proudly. So it doesn't matter how much I tell you that it's good for you. You still have to like it. You have to love it. So I have to find that nice balance between what I know is going to be a good communication to the masses, but also that you're going to love. So I have to get to know you. What colors do you like? What colors do you hate? What fonts do you like? What fonts do you hate? I can recommend a sans serif font, but if you are all about serifs, well, I'm not going to get very far. You know what I mean?
I do.
So it's really sort of an intimate process, but then, an intimate in terms of getting the seeds. But then when I turn around and I give you sort of, okay, here's options A, B, and C, there has to be an impersonalness there, which gets a little bit painful. As much as, you might really like the ugliest logo, I kind of have to steer you to one that will still have mass appeal. So it's a real balancing act, I have found, in all of the logos that I've worked on. So did I even answer your question? I'm sorry.
No, absolutely. Because, it brings me to the next thing. What if I just want to design a logo with a type font? What if I just say, well, I can just design something for myself using Times New Roman? How do you combat that? Like, how do you convince me that my best plan of action is to develop something that's going to resonate with myself first, but then with other people?
Well, I'm not actually going to talk you into that. I've found if you're not sold on the idea that you need something, there is no selling you. I have found in my experience. So it's best if I can keep a client open-minded. There have been very successful people who have just done their name in Times New Roman, but there's a lot of people out there and it's hard to stand out from the crowd. And if I can kind of get somebody to see that, if they truly want to stand out, if they truly want to get attention, if they truly want to be picked up out of the pile, then maybe it's time to step it up a little bit and sort of take a chance with something clever, something a little bit more going on than just Times New Roman bold. Does that make sense?
It totally does. Now, with regards to, the concept. So let's say, okay, you've got me going. You've convinced me that maybe I should try something. Like even though you don't want to convince me, you sent me home with some thoughts that maybe
that's
you want to.
Exactly what I'll do.
Maybe,
That's exactly what I'll do.
Maybe you want to think about it, right?
Yeah.
Maybe you want to think about having a logo. So, should I go home and should I sketch out some ideas? Should I look at some logos online and say, hey, I like how this company and this company and this company does their logo. Can you make me something in between? How should I start to concept for myself so that I can communicate with you as a designer?
How you should start to concept for yourself is look at your competition. What are they doing? What do you like? What do you not like? Who do you really envy that you wish you had their brand, and why? And then you can even show me a couple of these brands and say, I really like this one and I really like that one. And just because you might not be able to figure out why you like them, as a designer, I absolutely will be able to see, oh, it's these similarities. It's the boldness. There's a boldness in all of them, and it, by seeing what you like, immediately gives me an instant inside of your head. So that's my favorite. First step is to get a client looking at their competition. And the reason I say their competition is because, well, you want to be as good or better than them if you're trying to, get on the same playing field with them. But also, they're already doing it. And I know you're already looking at your competition, or if you're not, you should be. So that's where I usually start everybody. I learned a while ago that when I say, if you have sketches, you want to get them to me, that they kind of freak out and look at me with the big eyes. So I don't usually mention sketches unless they say, well, I've been sketching. And then of course I want to see it. But it seems to kind of intimidate a lot of people that I've worked with.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Although maybe I just haven't been working with artsy types. I don't know. A lot of people basically come to me and say, I really need something and I just need it to work. And that's the best kind, because you know that they're open-minded, you know that that they'll work with you, and yet they'll work with you. They're not going to dictate every step of the way, which there's nothing wrong with that either. It's just a little bit harder to be creative. You know what I mean?
I understand. So what happens, have you ever had a client, who wants a logo and they say, well, I know what it looks like in my mind, but they can't really flesh it out for you?
Yeah.
How does that work? How do you help someone who knows what they want their image to look like internally, but they can't articulate it?
That's an excellent question. That's actually the biggest feedback that I get is they will say, Sonja, it's like you see what's in my head. And it goes back to asking you those questions that might seem archaic. Point to things, point to posters, just show me anything. Believe it or not, it's not that hard to get what's inside your head out. You might get tired of answering, if you're working with any designer, just keep answering their questions. Just keep saying yes or no. If they put a design in front of you, be brutally honest. I like this top part, I don't like this bottom part, and I don't like it because blah, blah, blah. The more specific that you will be on a designer's feedback, the faster you'll get to the design in your head.
Very good. Now, with regards to that, the logo, what's a range of costs that I can expect to pay for a logo? Because that'll be my next question. Well, can I really afford a logo? Aren't logos really expensive?
If you are a national brand, yes, logos are very expensive. If you're a startup writer, they don't have to be. There are some resources out there. If you want to shop online, there are freelance sites online that have very good designers. I do caution anybody who is checking out online sources that copyright is absolutely a concern, and writers are already copyright aware, I'm hoping. So definitely you want to own the copyright. You don't want to be infringing on anybody's artwork. So just always keep that in mind when you're looking for a designer. If you're looking for affordable design, $50 for a logo, you kind of get what you pay for. You asked me prices, so I'm going to throw some prices out there. And tell me if I'm way off base. Now, we are, in the suburbs between, where are we between? Are we saying that?
Well, between you and I are between Richmond.
Yeah, between you and I, yes, we're between Richmond. And in this area, $200, $600, $800. It just depends on the firm that you end up with. Be a little leery of the $50 logo, but that doesn't mean that it would be a bad one either. Do you know what I mean?
I do. You mentioned something really interesting. You mentioned online sources, because there are sources like Upwork, and there's freelancer.com, there's Fiverr. The online sources, what happens if I choose an online source and you of course mention the copywriting, and I notice that they use the same artwork for other people after the fact? What can I do?
You really can't do. I don't know that you can do anything. That is the downside. And I don't know, maybe you can. You'd have to look in the terms and conditions of that specific website. But really, probably can't do anything. The downside of paying less for an online source is you don't have that personal connection. You probably aren't even using a phone. You're just digital typing your requests. It's very hard to get the point across just by typing. You're usually limited to a certain number of drafts that they'll show you, and you kind of have to live with what you're given, or pay for another try scenario. And that works for some people. I don't ever want to chase away anybody who is eager to brand just because they don't have a startup budget. So if all you can afford is the lowest budget logo you can find, then at least do that. Start somewhere. You can always improve. Although, even though I just said you can always improve, I'd rather you start out on your best foot possible, right?
Right. No, it's very important, because once you've developed your brand, once you've put it out there for people to see, you don't want to go switching on people.
You don't want to go switching on people, but you have to start. You have to start somewhere. In the best case scenario, you start with the absolute best brand that you can put out there. But if that prohibits you from getting out there at all, then by all means, start somewhere.
Oh, I totally subscribe to that. If you really can't afford to go full on, just get something going, but something at least that's in the ballpark that way when you improve it, it's not a drastic leap. People can still recognize the connection.
Yeah, and the Pepsi logo is a very good example. I don't know if you remember when we were kids, the Pepsi logo looked very different than it looks today. And if you just search it online, you can see how the Pepsi logo has transitioned, but it's still recognized as a Pepsi logo. All logos do that to keep up with the times, but they keep within their brand.
Oh yeah, I don't know if you remember a couple of years ago when Gap had that huge logo backlash, and all they did was change the font. Do you remember that?
Yeah. No, I gotta go look that up.
Yeah. So Gap had this huge logo backlash. They made a change to the font, and people went nuts, and they ended up going back to their old logo.
Well, and that's where they possibly
The
miscalculated that their font was more important than they.
Yeah, it's just that, once the consumer, understands who you are, they really tether into that identity.
Yeah.
So it's very important.
And a consumer isn't going to say, I'm really attached to your brand and I trust you because of your brand. They're never going to say that. But if they notice inconsistencies or you kind of don't have a trustworthy appearance, they will subliminally respond by not giving you all of their business. It's just a subliminal perception, and it's hard to explain to people, but when you see it in action, it's incredibly powerful.
Right, yeah, and I've seen that happen with logos, on social media where someone would get a logo but not know that they should be using the same logo across all platforms.
Oh, nothing makes me more nuts.
Because then again, you're talking about you're playing with your identity in a way that's going to confuse the people you're trying to attract.
If I do something to confuse my customer, they probably don't care enough about me to track me down and figure out what's the confusing part. They're just going to go to somebody that's not confusing them. So it's my obligation, if I want your business, to be consistent. And I had that incident. Maybe we talked about that before, Chris. I was on one of the social media platforms and was really intrigued with somebody's publication, actually. And then I went to their website and it looked completely different. And I actually had a moment of, wait a minute, am I on the right website? And then I said, well, okay, this person doesn't really know what they're doing. And well, maybe I don't really want to invest in their publication. I actually did that mental process. You can know that the public does that as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And so that's for our people listening, just knowing the importance of, one, developing an identity, very important, for your branding, whether you're doing books, whether you're positioning yourself as a writer who does public speaking, or whether you're developing a website that's going to be writing services as a freelancer. It's definitely important to stay true to your brand by developing something that's consistent across all platforms, from your website to your business card to your social media. Everywhere where that logo goes, it needs to look the same in each instance.
Yes, it does. And maybe do we need to just spell out the really basic, what that means to be consistent in brand?
Yeah, no, please do. Please do. Elaborate.
Okay, well, let's say that you've gotten your logo from your designer and you have it. You put it on everything. You put it on all of your social media. You put it on your business card. You put it on the bookmarks. You put it on your flyers. So it's on everything. And then your logo happens to be red, white, and blue. So when you are doing other materials, you want to use, guess what colors? Red, white, and blue. If you decide to go off and do a yellow flyer, that's okay, but make sure that it still looks like it's your brand and has your logo clear. If you're usually using Arial, it would be really great if you could use Arial on most everything that you put out to the public. It's just the little details.
Very true. Now, when I get my logo back from my designer, so we've designed the logo, I've gotten it back from the designer, what file format should I request?
Oh my gosh, that is such a good question. You should request a JPEG, a PNG, and an EPS, and probably a PDF, I'd say. And would you like me to explain those very quickly?
I would.
Okay, JPEG is just your good all around. You can apply it to most everything. You treat it like a photo, and it's really easy to throw it onto websites, Word docs if you're doing your own letterhead, things like that. And you can send it, post it. It's just a great all around file. A PNG file, a PNG, has the transparent background, and luckily now is used on all websites to get a really good effect and not have that white background. Say you have a circle logo, and if you've ever worked with a graphic, your circle logo has this really ugly white square around it and you can't get rid of it. Well, the .png file is the one that gets rid of that, white square. So you have a nice clean circle to put on things. The EPS file is very confusing to a lot of people. It's a vector file, meaning in layman's terms, it's what your t-shirt designers, your billboard artists, your coffee mug people are going to want, because when they print it really big and they scale it for screen printing and things like that, it's not jagged. So you may not even be able to open your EPS file, but it is incredibly important. And anybody that you work with is going to ask you for your vector file. And then PDF is just a good high resolution, really fantastic if you're submitting it for advertisements, print, publications mostly is what I use it for.
Super. Thanks for expanding on that, because those files are so important. I can't tell you, the numbers of times where someone will want something pretty large format and then you get a JPEG and it's like, that's not going to work.
Oh,
that's,
yeah.
That's
low
resolution
yeah. JPEG is a designer's worst nightmare. You always want more than one file type, preferably the EPS, JPEG, PNG, and PDF.
There you have it.
And there's no reason that your designer won't give you those. You just make sure you ask for them.
All right. Very good. Now let's move on to the next phase. Now that I've got my logo, I'm thrilled to death. I'm excited about throwing it on everything.
Yay!
But now I want to network. I want people to know who I am. I want them to see, this great thing that I've done and what I'm about to do. So I want a business card.
Business card.
Yes.
Yeah.
So let's talk about business cards. So start me off. So I come to you now. I've got this great logo. I said, hey, Sonja, I need a business card. What do you tell me?
I say, yay, we're doing a custom business card so that you don't look like the run-of-the-mill, throw your name here, throw your phone number here, and oh my gosh, it looks like every other business card. No, this is where you spend your money. You want a custom business card. You want it to stand out. You preferably higher quality paper so that it feels good in the hand and it doesn't end up in the trash can as fast, for one. For two, it definitely needs to fit your brand, meaning let's keep with your logo, your colors, your font, and it needs to be really, really readable. Because if somebody can't read your business card, they're not going to work too hard to read it. They're just going to dismiss it. In my opinion, I like using your name big, especially if we're talking about an individual such as a writer who is trying to network, you're trying to sell yourself. I really like having your name big and a photo, if you would consider it your headshot, because keeping personal and people might remember your face if they've met you, it ties it together. It's in this day and age, it's harder and harder to make personal connections, I think. So your name, your photo, your brand, and your contact information. I've seen people include social media, not include social media. That's really up to, I think, personal preference. Don't forget the backside. Side 2 of the business card is really, really, really important and often neglected. Even if you want to keep it blank because you want to write notes on it, which I think is a fantastic idea, I still like to put a faded version of your logo on the back, or your little tagline across the bottom, or maybe that's where you put your social media. Use the back so that you look like you really know what you're doing, like you meant to do it, and you just kind of stand out above everybody else. And a business card is, by the piece, is the cheapest form of marketing that you can put out there. So invest in a good design, buy a whole lot of them, and give them out like they're candy.
I like that. Give them out like they're candy.
Yeah.
So, all right. So let's talk about quality of paper. You mentioned quality of paper. What density of paper should I get? What point size should I get in terms of?
The bare minimum that I use is 14 point. And that's not bad. 16 point is good. That's mostly what I end up printing in.
Okay, so why does it matter to have a card that just is heavier in the hand?
Well, because when I hold it in my hand, I say, oh, this person didn't run it on their home DeskJet printer and it doesn't have perforation marks on it. That those do-at-home business cards just are very malleable and just don't feel professional. Also, you kind of want it to stand up to being in someone's pocket, being in their Rolodex, if people even have those anymore. I do. Being in their little portfolio books. You don't want it to look like junk after the first day of toting them around. I keep them in my purse, and cheaper cards can actually wear and bend and just look really junky before you even get them out of your purse. So good paper holds up. Also tells people that you mean business and that you're not cheap.
Right. Now, is it expensive to print on good paper?
No, it's really not. If you were investing in a decent design, printing on a little bit heavier paper is really not, it's incremental. Printing on other types of materials, such as plastic, does get more expensive. Personally, Chris, I don't know if you remember my card, but I still use the plastic card. I've used the plastic card for about 7 years. I love it. I can't write on it, but when I meet people, they say, oh, I still have your card from last year. And every time I hand my card to somebody, they go, wow, that's a great card. But I'm a designer. I need that. Wow, that's a great card. So I pay a whole lot for my plastic ones. But nice paper really doesn't have to be that expensive. You want to start getting fancy with metallics and things like that, yeah, you can start paying. And that's personal taste. Again, I think anything you can do to make it look like a professional design and to stand out from the crowd, go for it.
Okay. Now, with the printing, there are so many, places to print. Do you recommend that I just walk down to my local copy shop? Do I go to Staples? Do I go to Vistaprint? Who do you recommend, or what do you recommend I do with the printing?
Ask your designer first, because they've probably printed with a lot of people and they can tell you who to go to, or they can even help you with the printing. Otherwise, it just depends on how you work best. Do you need to see someone face to face and lay the card out on the counter and point and touch and feel papers? Then in that case, find a printer that's not too far from you. And a lot of people, to include your, Staples and some of the bigger companies, they do a fine job with printing these days. If you are not the touchy-feely and you know what kind of paper you want and you just want to deal with somebody online, just make sure that you're getting the high, the heavier, order the heaviest weight they give you, to order online. And I guess that's probably my best advice on that.
Okay, that's good.
Paper option they give you if you're doing online.
No, that's good. That's good, because I think with there being so many options, you have to know how to work with each of those options.
Yes.
And then quantity. I'm brand new to everything. I want to get out there and start to network. How many do I need to start with?
I have had so many people say, I just want 100 cards, when if they had just ordered 500, they would really, be paying barely much more. It's very expensive to just get 100 cards versus 500 cards. So I would say at a minimum, get the 500 cards. If there's a possibility that you might be changing your email, may possibly be changing your phone number, 500 is a good idea, but 1,000, again, 1,000 is not that expensive. So don't order 100 is my advice.
All right. I'll definitely won't do that now. Now, when it comes to reordering, how low should I let my quantity get before I reorder?
Well, I guess that depends on how active you are. Are you regularly networking? How many cards are you passing out a week? Are you like me? I get requests, hey, can you leave a pile of your cards here? And before you know it, I've wiped out my carry with me stash. And then sometimes I have my stash for a while because I've been, working in the office and not seeing people. So it just really depends on how active you are. But if you get down to about 100, I'd say definitely reorder.
Okay. That's a good safe number.
Don't you think?
I do. Well, that way it gives you time to order because, of course, it takes, it can take up to 5 days to get your quantity back,
It can. And a lot of people run into the problem of, they call me up and say, Sonja, I have this trade show next month and I just realized that I'm out of cards. And then they're in a panic. So also be thinking in terms of, are you going to need plenty of cards in time for this trade show, for that Christmas promo? Pre-plan. It's a lot easier when you're not panicked and you're not paying rush fees to get your printing in quickly.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah, there's really no reason to ever pay rush fees. Sorry.
Now, here's a question for you. Okay, so let's say, all right, my business cards have been printed. I've got a box of, 500, but I've knocked out about 250. So I got 250 cards left, but I changed my email address or I changed my phone number. Do I write over that?
No.
Do I white it out? As a designer, what are your professional recommendations so that I don't lose any of my professional cred?
My professional recommendation is order new cards with updated information as soon as possible. In that week to 2 week period that you're waiting for your new cards, it is permissible to write your new email address on your old cards. Only during that time when you're waiting for your new cards, because it just looks unprofessional and it looks like you are wishy-washy or just, unprofessional.
Okay.
Sorry.
No.
That's a biggie for me.
I know. It's funny. I love throughout this conversation, just all the different questions and how they've caused a reaction in you as a designer. It's so funny.
Well, and let's say that you're in the business of writing. Marketing might not be your favorite passion. And so you might not think it's a big deal, but that doesn't mean that your public doesn't think it's a big deal. So trust your marketing friends, trust your designer. It's a big deal. Don't write in your email address on your card.
Ooh, I love that. Trusting your designer.
Yes.
Yeah.
I live, eat, and breathe design and marketing. So I pay attention to what people are paying attention to. I pay attention to what the trends are. And I really know bad design and bad habits when I see it. So that's why people hire me, so that I can keep an eye out for their marketing, because they maybe don't care about marketing. They know it's important, but they'd rather be baking and fixing things. You know what I mean?
I do.
Yeah. So.
All right. Now, let's talk about one more thing.
Okay.
Let's talk about the leave behind piece. As a writer, I want to pitch editors. I want to, put my book in people's hands, but I also want to leave them something,
Yes.
to remember me by.
Yes.
What do you recommend for that?
Okay. A leave behind is incredibly important. Most people will think trifold brochure, and trifold brochure has a time and a place. I prefer a trifold for a lot of information for a product, for example. But if I'm an individual and I'm trying to promote my writing, or in my case, promote my art, I would rather leave behind something that's a little clever. Something, again, that's not going to get tossed in the trash can as soon as I leave. So postcard, rack card, they're quicker glance. I don't have to open it up and feel all stuffy and, what am I looking at here? Also, with writers, I've done bookmarks. I love doing bookmarks for writers. They're fun. They tie back to the mindset of, books and other types of items that there's really, flyers. You don't want to get into the cool stuff like coffee mugs and stuff until you've already had a relationship with them. So printed flat items are probably best for people when breaking the ice and you're trying to first get on their radar. Postcards are probably the biggest one that I do because they're a multi-purpose. They can be a little bit bigger version of your business cards. So again, repeating your logo, repeating your headshot, repeating your contact information, but it can have a space where you can actually drop it in the mail. You don't have to put an address and a stamp on it. You can actually put a handwritten note. Hey, really great, meeting with you. Really looking forward to chatting next month, and sign your name. So it's a personal piece. It's also something that you can put into an envelope with a sample of your goods. So it's a really multi-purpose piece and a leave behind, and can have a little summary of your mission statement, for example.
Now with a postcard, do you have like a size recommendation? Because I know that you can do them as 3x5s, 4x6s, 5x7s, or you can go like the whole like political style, which I totally despise. The 8.5x11.
I know those are just cumbersome.
They are.
I've done all ranges. Don't do one too small, because if you're doing that, then you could just do your business card, and don't do one too big because that's just obnoxious. So 5x7 is probably the most popular size that I do. The other is a 4x9, which is a rack card. Those are really great because, again, you can put it in a letter-sized envelope and mail it. You can put it in any of the stand-ups, get those rack card stand-up things. If you've got a local visitor center and it's appropriate for you to put your information there, those kinds of places have rack card holders. So it's really just a funny shaped postcard. But those are the two sizes I do the most and would recommend, is a 5x7 and a 4x9. You can print the front and the back on those, by the way.
Cool. And is there a particular stock weight that I should use for that one too?
16-point minimum, I'd say.
Very cool. All right, we're going to come in for a landing now.
Oh, we are? Oh,
we are, yeah. Yeah, dude, we've had a great talk about just kind of like logos, business cards, the leave behind.
Yes, those are the big keys. Anybody who has the logo, business card, and a leave behind really has a good foothold on a brand and can make the professional impression. So.
Well, before we do, quick question, like, can these things, if I hire a designer, can they do all this stuff like in tandem, like basically package all this stuff for me?
Yeah, it's actually more efficient if you do it all at the same time, because the designer is, first of all, they're on the same page. They've done your logo. They're already at one with your brand, and it's a lot easier for them to knock out your business card and your leave behind in conjunction. They will probably give you a price break if you can let them do it all at the same time. So it's definitely beneficial. And then, you know what? It's done. There's no dragging it out. And then you just have your pieces. And then you can go forward and network in complete confidence that you mean business and you look like you mean business.
Woo! I like it.
Yeah.
I like it. You definitely know your stuff. Yeah. All right. So let's have a little fun here now.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, I'm going to take you around the horn. Just ask you just some fun questions now that we're going to kind of wrap things up.
All right, go
All
for
right.
it.
So do you have a favorite writer yourself?
I have multiple favorite writers. My all-time favorite book ever, and I read it every year, is Wuthering Heights. I'm a sap, I know. But I also like Pride and Prejudice and Harry Potter, of course. Those are my favorites. Oh, Shakespeare. Duh. He's like my all-time favorite. Romeo and Juliet. Romeo and Juliet, Hamlet. Yeah, they're awesome.
Nice. So if you could exchange lives with one person for any day, who would it be?
Oh, exchange. Elon Musk.
Yeah?
Yeah, I would. In a heartbeat.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know why. Just... I just think that would be fantastic.
He's got a mean creative streak, doesn't he?
Yes. and he's not afraid of anything. And wow, he put some stuff out there.
Oh, he does. He does. He's a big risk taker. He's definitely a hero of mine too.
Yeah. With
regards to business or professional development, what are your favorite books in those genres?
Well, I happen to have this right here on my desk staring at me. Is Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. My all-time number one favorite. I also like Darren Hardy, Success, and Spencer Johnson, The Present.
Love that book. I love The Present.
I try to reread or re-listen to The Present quarterly because it's really easy to get way out there and forget to stay in the present.
So. It really is. It really is. Okay, so how can our listeners contact you?
Well, I am online at sowise.co, and that's SOWISE.co. I'm on social media, but you can find all of that if you go to my website. Is that enough information?
No, absolutely, absolutely.
I prefer to keep it simple because people don't remember a ton of information. Why should they? So I like to give out, I think a website should be all encompassing, and I like to give out a website which links out to everything you need from me. My social media, my email, my references, everything's there.
And so on your website, they can learn about all the services you offer?
Yes, you can see samples, and I'm happy to answer questions and point people in the right direction if necessary. I'm a big believer in helping. It's one of my soft points. So feel free to contact me.
Well, I love your tagline, designed with you in mind. It's a very personal tagline for a designer, so I love that.
Thank you.
Wow, what an inspiring episode. If you weren't able to take notes, I've got you covered. Visit my website at www.chrisjonesinc.com/podcast to get today's show notes, as well as access other episodes you may have missed. Be sure to subscribe and rate the podcast on iTunes. I'd love to hear from you. Until next time.